Hi, my name is Alejandra Cornejo and this is my evidence 3. Through the pass of time, the world has changed in many aspects. The conditions of the people have been modified by the new decisions taken by the countries. These decisions have brought many advantages as disadvantages. In this video, I will mention and explain some important concepts that have affected and changed our lives. These are globalization, terrorism, a unipolar world, and the digital era. Globalization. It is a process of interaction and integration among the people, companies, and governments of different nations, a process driven by international trade and investment, and aided by information technology. But why did globalization emerge? Globalization has existed because of the needs of humans so we could live in a more complete way. Through the pass of time, globalization has grown, increasing the international trade between all the countries around the world, fueling economic growth and human advance by the new technologies, foreign investments, expanding media, and internet connections. Globalization has always been practiced because humanity needs the resources of different places in the world for different needs, which benefits the economies of the countries, letting them to become stronger and allowing the spread of different cultures as well. A very clear example of globalization is the history of Starbucks, because it has now more than 21,500 stores in 64 countries and territories. It is the image of omnipresence. The first Starbucks opened on March 30, 1971. The founders are Jerry Baldwin, Seth Seald, and Gordon Bowker. All were instructed in the art of roasting by Peet's Coffee and tea founder Alfred Peet. They drew the theme of their new coffee company from nautical mythology, commissioning that first vision of the company's signature siren and picking a name out of Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Howard Schultz joined Starbucks as director of marketing in 1982. Schultz found enough investors to purchase Starbucks outright, which put him in a position as CEO to set about his magnificent mission in earnest, first Seattle, then the United States, and then the world. Starbucks' greatest period of expansion began in the early 1990s, having already opened money-losing branches in the US Midwest and British Columbia. It then moved profitably into California in 1991, making its initial public offering on the stock market the following year. Starbucks seems unstoppable throughout that decade and most of the next, opening an average 2 new stores every day until 2007. But the increasingly globalized company's fortunes started to mirror those of the global economy, and the following year saw Starbucks shutter hundreds of locations, a grim necessity unthinkable just a decade earlier. Now, a unipolar world. Unipolarity in international politics is a distribution of power in which one state exercises most of the cultural, economic, and military influence. So, how does the end of the Cold War relate with the unipolar world? During the Cold War, the world was bipolar by the two superpowers, the Soviet Union and the United States. Later on, when the war ended with the defeat of the Soviet Union, the world became unipolar, with only the United States remaining as the superpower. The end of the Cold War. The Cold War ended after the Soviet economy had stagnated following their participation in the arms race with the USA, and also as a result of declining oil prices in the 1980s. A later attempt to introduce a market economy failed. The power of the Communist Party has undermined. Eastern European countries declared independence, the Warsaw Pact dissolved, and finally the world saw the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. When the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev resigned in 1991, it marked the end of the bipolar era in world politics. Unipolarity is used to describe the power structure when one superpower dominates alone. The end of the Cold War meant that the previous decade's superpower rivalry now had ended. There was no longer the traditional East versus West conflict, at least not the way it had been earlier in the 20th century. The United States surfaced as the sole dominated power in world politics as there were no real challengers to their hegemonic position. This allowed greater room for the superpower to maneuver and get involved in international issues that do not necessarily coincided with national interests. We can describe this new political situation as being unipolar. Terrorism. Terrorism is the calculated use of unlawful violence or threat of unlawful violence to inculcate fear, intended to coerce or to intimidate governments or societies in the pursuit of goals that are generally political, religious, or ideological. So, in most of the cases, what caused the terrorist attacks of the 20th century? Terrorist attacks always happen because of the disagreement between two or more groups or countries. In the 20th century, many attacks took place. Since the beginning of World War I, World War II, and the beginning of the 21st century. In the late 20th century, Islamic militancy in pursuit of religious and political goals increased, causing many important terrorist attacks, like the well-known World Trade Center bombing by Islamic terrorists on February 27. Many violent Islamic militants of the late 20th and early 21st century had been caused in the 1980s by the United States and the UK because they were fighting the USSR in Afghanistan. So, the 911. On September 11, 2001, 19 militants associated with the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airlines and carried out suicide attacks against targets in the United States. 2 of the planes were flown into the towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. A third plane hit the Pentagon just outside Washington, D.C., and the fourth plane crashed in a field of Pennsylvania. Often referred to as 911, the attacks resulted in extensive death and destruction, triggering major U.S. initiative to combat terrorism and defining the presidency of George Bush. Over 3,000 people were killed during the attacks in New York City and Washington, D.C., including more than 400 police officers and firefighters. The digital era. This is a historical period characterized by the existence of digital technology. So, how was the digital era influenced today's society? With the digital era, the world has had many technological advances, like the progression of computers and cell phones, which, as you know, form a fundamental part of our lives, helping us to process documents, perform numeric operations, control systems of all types, study, work, and be entertained. Nowadays, the Internet has also marked a profound change in education, on labor and personal level, becoming a monumental platform for conveying information of any type. Its speed for global reach has led to a revolution in the way we communicate. It doesn't matter the distance from another person. The Internet allows us to communicate in real time and to exchange messages, images, videos, etc. The digital era has helped the countries and the society to develop faster, but with the growth of technologies, many disadvantages started. Teenagers and young people are becoming more dislocated from society. Isolation is a very common problem. Teenagers prefer to talk with the people that is far from them, causing the separation from the ones that are around them, like their family. The creation of smartphones. A smartphone is a device or cell phone able to perform many of the functions of a computer, typically having a relatively large screen and an operating system capable of running general-purpose applications. The very first device from research in motion, the BlackBerry 850, was released in 1989, followed by several different models, focused heavily on email with spacious keyboards. BlackBerry became a well-known brand in the enterprise market. In the early 2000s, Symbian BlackBerry OS, Palm OS, and Windows Mobile became increasingly popular, with capabilities such as email, fax, web browsing, and other enterprise-centric features. So did form factors that caters to such use cases. Between 2000 and 2006, cell phone manufacturers eagerly explored dozens of different form factors to capitalize on the new mobile functionality. Sliding and flipping keyboards, rotating displays, water-style phones with displays positioned above permanent vertical keyboards, etc. These smartphones were originally marketed mainly towards enterprise and business users needed to stay connected on the go. However, from 2004 to 2007, there was a dramatic rise in smartphone usage, and devices like consumer-targeted BlackBerry 8700 and Charm series, the Samsung Blackjack Palm Trios, as well as the Motorola Q, found their way into the hands of everyday consumers. In 2007, the wireless industry took a dramatic turn. That was all set to change when Apple announced the iPhone in January 2007 and launched it months later in June. Apple's idea of the smartphone combined powerful multimedia functions as all other smartphones previously had. Its user interface was finger-friendly, and unlike phones before it, the iPhone had only one button on its face, the home button, and three around its edges, two for volume and one for power or standby. Apple's mobile operating system, iOS, was still very basic at the time, but it was the first glimpse into the new modern mobile smartphone operating system we know today. The creation of a smartphone was an important event in the digital era. It not only connected people, but little by little started to simplify everyday tasks for common people, such as sending emails, marking events in a calendar, writing notes, taking pictures and videos, listening to music, use maps, play games, and many other tasks. Smartphones continue changing and adding more features and functions until one day we could practically do everything in our smartphone. So, with all the previous information, we can see how the world has changed. But it is possible that we can live under a new world order, which is a conspiracy from the wealthiest countries to set a one-governor bureaucracy controlled by elitists. One country wants full power, claiming to bring peace to the world. I don't think that it is possible because all the countries would like to be the leader, and none of them will accept to live under the rules of another. Thank you very much.